Back again for another video. As you can see, I'm home. A lot of my videos are going to be from home now, probably. Got more time on my hands, same amount of money coming in. It's great. But anyways, so the topic that I want to discuss today is about boundaries. Boundaries are a fundamental of life. Boundaries exist everywhere we go. Most everything that we see, most everything that we do has a boundary involved in some way, shape, or form. This is the existence of things. Even your organisms or your cells have boundaries. They have the cell wall that keeps the internal structures separated from the external structures. The external environment. Even down to a cellular level, there are structures. So if there are structures down to such a small level, there has to be structures to a higher level. The reason why I bring up boundaries is because, once again, it is a fundamental, but through my experiences, I've learned how to cultivate them and have them serve my purpose rather than them be a detriment to me. And there are certain boundaries that can be a detriment to you. Of course, this goes to the interaction between male and female, and with anyone, and be male and male and female and female. But there are certain things that you have to take into account when you deal with boundaries. Now, basically, boundaries are meant to keep stuff in and keep stuff out. Certain stuff. But there can be unhealthy boundaries and healthy boundaries. The healthy boundaries, they can, give you the opportunity to let certain things in that you may need while keeping certain things out that you don't need. Say, for instance, like a mosquito net. A mosquito net is a boundary. It keeps small, organisms that are mosquito size and bigger out from wherever you cover. It could be a patio or something like that, so that you are not subject to being bitten by mosquitoes. Although at the same time, it lets in something that's necessary, and that's fresh air. That's oxygen. It doesn't completely seal you off from the external environment. It's just a boundary meant specifically for things like mosquitoes to keep out. That is an example of a tangible, healthy boundary. An unhealthy boundary. Unhealthy boundaries would be a vacuum sealed room. Because it while it may keep out anything that can harm you, it's also keeping out things that are beneficial to you, such as oxygen, once again. So this plays out in many arenas. You have to be cognitive of the type of things that you put up as boundaries, because they could potentially not let in things that you need in order to grow, in order to live. I'll give an example. And another thing about boundaries before I give the example is that boundaries are meant for specific things. You could put up the wrong boundary and still let in harmful things. Because the boundary that you put up is not suited for what you're trying to keep out. And people oftentimes wonder why they still have the problems that they have, even though they put in measures to prevent things from happening in their lives. It's because you don't have the proper boundary set up. And all these things that I'm talking about are things that you can cultivate and, trial and error to figure out what works for you. But ultimately, a boundary is an objective thing. But it can be subjectively cultivated to your needs and desires. But anyways, so an unhealthy boundary is pretty much where you set up a boundary that is not keeping out what you want to keep out, and it's neither letting in what you need to let in. Just like the example, or not like the example, but let's say, or you're trying to keep something in, but what you're trying to keep in is escaping your boundary, and you're just letting it out, such as your energy, your time spent, your efforts. You know, you're giving the people around you all this energy, and yet you're not getting anything in return most times. It's because that's an unhealthy boundary that you need, because while it is an open boundary for your energy to flow out, the boundary isn't set up for that same energy to come back in. That's another example of an unhealthy boundary, and it works in several ways. Another example of an unhealthy boundary is when nothing gets out and nothing comes in. This is the easiest boundary to set up, because it gives you the ability to wave away any responsibility from interaction with others. You can't be held accountable, and you can't hold others accountable for their actions, or for your actions, because you don't have that interaction with others. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and she told me that, she was a jaded individual, and she didn't want to deal with men, to a degree that everything that a man told her, she just wrote it off as that he was full of shit, pretty much. But that stunted her growth and her ability to mature with getting a healthy understanding of how men move, because that prevented her from seeing what the truth was and being a part of what the truth was, because she was not accepting of any exchange. That's an unhealthy boundary, because it doesn't give you the ability to grow. And with cultivating boundaries, there are going to be mishaps. There are going to be mistakes made. But like I always say, the only mistake that is detrimental to you is the one that you don't learn from. So be cognitive of the boundaries that you set up with individuals and anything. Be cognitive, because boundaries are meant to keep things out, certain things, but they're also meant as an entryway for other things to come in. Just like a house, it's no different. I mean, you can't walk directly through a wall, and it's pretty hard to get through windows, so they invented a door. But the door is meant for certain access to be granted for certain things. That's the reason why it has a lock on it, because at the time where you don't need necessary access, you need to go into a protection mode to prevent things that you do not want coming in to come in. So be healthy. Have a door to your life. Don't have a sealed off four-cornered room with no entryways and no exit ways. This is ultimately going to be the death of you, literally, because you won't have the ability to grow. And in an environment, you need to be able to grow. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind, and you're going to be held to the standards of an ever-growing environment, while everyone else is progressing in life and everyone else is making it through and figuring out ways to adapt to the ever-changing environment. You're going to be subject to not only the current situations, but the future situations that you have learned no adaptability to. But anyways, talk long enough. I got a few things I need to do this morning. Yeah. So let me get off this here video. But anyways, I hope this was beneficial to those of my listeners, and they understood where I was coming from. Be cognitive of the boundaries you set up. They could be your ultimate demise in many things. But anyways, This has been a Wolf and Beta Close. May you have a good day, and peace be with you.